What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with a conservation video for Liberty Hill Comics, where I share my passion and over 40 years experience comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today we are continuing our video series in which we clean and press this Silver Age key comic book and prepare it for submission to CGC. This comic book had been previously dry cleaned by someone and not very well, as they left obvious eraser marks that damaged the gloss on the back cover, as you can see in this image. Today we're going to review the entire process we took this book through, reveal the final results, and we'll calculate just how much equity we created with the clean and press and CGC submission. So if that sounds like fun, stick around. In case you missed it, in episode 1 we talked about showcase number 60, the first appearance of the Spectre in the Silver Age after a full 20 years absence from comic book publications. We talked about the historical significance of the Spectre, his prominence in the early Golden Age, his founding member status of the JSA, and the big bucks that his early cover appearances demand in the market. We also discussed the CGC census on this comic book and the fair market value before completing a walkthrough assessment of the condition of this comic book and developing our game plan. This comic book presents really well for a nearly 60-year-old comic, but had some notable flaws, including rusty staples, rust migration into the paper, a minor spine split, a few color-breaking spine ticks, as well as some minor color-breaking creasing, and some general soiling. We also noticed that this comic book had been dry cleaned before, and not very carefully. A previous cleaner had left eraser marks on the cover of the comic book that disrupted the gloss. We set as one of our goals to address the gloss loss on the cover. In episode 2, I dry cleaned the front cover of the comic book, cleaning up especially the white areas on the Spectre's body and the title in the trade dress, using cotton rounds and a few different erasers of different diameters to suit the areas we cleaned. We successfully removed some foreign substance from the cover and nearly 60 years of dirt buildup. Satisfied with the results, it was time to move on to the back cover. In episode 3, we dry cleaned the back cover where the bulk of the accumulated dirt, grime, and damage from the previously performed amateur dry cleaning resided. I also discussed the fact that conservators have found that clean and dry bare hands are generally safer than gloved hands for handling precious documents and old books, and the Library of Congress and conservation societies around the world recommend clean and dry hands over gloved hands for most conservation activities, which is why I do not use gloves for most comic book conservation work. In episode 4, I demonstrated how to use document cleaning powder or a document cleaning pad to dry clean comic books and prepare them for a final buff to restore the nice glossy look and vibrant colors indicative of a new comic book. If you're using the pad, it's not designed to be used as a giant cloth eraser. The correct way to use the pad is to dispense the eraser crumbs from the pad and then work them around the paper with your fingers before brushing them away. Rubbing the document cleaning pad over the comic book only smears dirt around the surface of the comic book cover. In episode 5, I demonstrated how I perform a final buff on the comic book using cotton rounds to put a nice natural sheen back on the cover. And then we finally looked at the results of all of our work. Here you can see the before and after pictures, and this comic book, although it had been previously dry cleaned, had plenty of cleanable and pressable defects. On the cover, we had plenty of cleaning to do, as is evident by the much whiter areas in the title and on the white parts of the Spectre's costume. On the back cover, owing to all the white gutter space, you can see the entire book is whiter. The front cover didn't start with many pressable defects, but we had a nice flat book with consistent cover gloss when we finished. The back cover had many pressable defects and showed marked improvements in how it presents with a nice flat book with consistent cover gloss. I'm especially proud of the way in which we restored the gloss to the back cover where the previous dry cleaner had left disruptions in the gloss. I've created a playlist for this series, and if you've missed any of the episodes and want to watch them before watching today's finale, follow the link to the playlist. At the conclusion of episode 5, I sent the book off to CGC for grading in the vintage tier. I took advantage of a sale they were running at the time, plus the discount I get for my elite membership to get it graded for $26 after shipping. I'm going to show you the final results from CGC in a minute, but before I do, let's talk about what this comic book was worth before the clean and press and submission, so we can see if we created any equity in our efforts here. As you may recall, the comic book came to us from friend of the channel Starman over on Instagram. Starman shared with us that he purchased the comic book off of eBay in 2022 as a 3.0 or good, very good. You can see from the seller's picture that the book is on a hobby mat similar to the one I and nearly all cleaners and pressers use. So there's a good chance the seller is the one that performed the amateurish dry clean on this copy. David paid $60 for this book in raw 3.0. So let's not keep you in suspense much longer. How did we do? Well, after months of waiting, we received what I think is a very fair grade for this book, 5.0 Universal. You can see it presents really well on the slab, but we did have some defects that we knew would hold this book back from a higher technical grade. In particular, you can see from CGC's grader notes that we had rusted staples, spine ticks, and creases that break color. There isn't much more we can do to maximize the grade on this book that wouldn't jeopardize our universal grade. I don't think de-rusting the staples or the resultant rust migration into the paper is worth the risk of a conserved grade, and we certainly wouldn't want to color touch this book to make those color-breaking creases and spine ticks disappear. That would be a disaster for the equity of this book. I think we maximize the grade and therefore the equity in this comic book with the careful clean and press we performed. And just what is the equity of the book today? The last 5.0 universal copy to sell in a public venue was an eBay fixed price sale from January of 2025 for $160 plus shipping and taxes. As I said, Starman paid $60 for this comic book, and the submission fees and shipping to and from CGC added another $26. That's $86 for a near double up in equity on this Silver Age gem. Now, Starman isn't about to sell this comic book anytime soon, but it's always nice to know that our work on this beautiful key comic book, the first Silver Age appearance of the Spectre after a full 20 years absence from publication, created some impressive equity. And most importantly, we preserved this comic for the next generation. If you want to learn more about the materials and methods I use to create comic book equity while preserving these historic gems, check out our new book titled Comic Book Conservation. My co-author, Dr. Shelby Thompson, and I combed the peer-reviewed paper conservation literature and collaborated with dozens of experienced conservators and synthesized everything we could find into one exciting practical guide to comic book conservation. With over 250 images of conservation techniques and before and after pictures, and over 50 references to the peer-reviewed paper conservation literature, it's the most comprehensive work of its kind, and it'll be available on Amazon soon. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this video series, please take a minute to like this video, Tell somebody about it, leave me a comment below, and by all means, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do. Thank you to Starman for trusting us with this cool comic book, and until next time, take care of one another.